Prediction markets. They are websites that, for some reason, exist. When you go to one, you'll find an infinite scroll of real-world events and their possible outcomes on which you can bet your hard-earned inheritance. Events like who will Donald Trump talk to in February? Logan Paul first edition Charizard sale price? Will Jesus Christ return before 2027? And when the US will strike Iran? But to this unholy list of questions, I'd like to add one of my own. Why is this allowed? In the rapidly evolving genus of prediction markets, two species stand above them all: Polymarket and Kalshi. These companies are strikingly similar beasts who together are largely responsible for the recent prediction markets boom. In just the last year, they've partnered with news agencies and sports leagues, launched massive ad campaigns, and each reached valuations of about $10 billion while processing over $1 billion from users every week. Folks, it's prediction markets world, and we're living in it.
Prediction markets are the future.
Predictions markets, very hot right now.
Google announcing it will integrate Kalshi's data into their search results.
The NHL just became the first major U.S. pro league to strike licensing deals with prediction market platforms.
An everyday person could liquidate their 401k and bet it on how many times the Chipotle CEO is going to say carne asada in their earnings call.
Prediction markets are going to be the next thing, separating your boyfriend from his salary.
I've been getting into prediction markets, and I think more people should be involved.
So we bought $100 that it's gonna go up. I'm locked in. No! Yo, this is emotional.
But prediction markets weren't always the multi-billion-dollar addiction apps that your husband checks on his phone immediately post-climax. In fact, prediction markets got their start as the insignificant fringe interest of enormous nerds. In 1998, faculty members at the University of Iowa created experimental prediction markets to discover what we could learn from letting people bet on things like the presidential election. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which oversees pretty much all trading, let them run the experiment so long as they kept the money dial turned down for non-profit/academia purposes. But now these things are most certainly non-profit. In fact, they're mucho profit. Did you see this coming? This explosion of prediction markets?
Anybody that says they saw this coming is full of shit, I'll tell you that much. It was so small, there was nothing going on in the background.
Dustin Gouker is a reporter who writes Event Horizons, a fantastic newsletter on prediction markets, if I do say so myself. Dustin explained to me why, at its core, the idea of prediction markets is so potentially valuable in the eyes of the world's beta-blocked VC bros.
Information is money, right? Information is super valuable. The more information you can have about world events and what's to come, that information is power. Like if you can tap into that information, then you have something. And again, this is why major financial interests are really getting into this and really find this interesting.
The major financial interests Dustin is talking about here are, among other things, investment banks and hedge funds, a few of which are hiring traders for prediction markets, titans of traditional news media, Venmo, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Donald Trump Jr., who's an advisor to Polymarket and Kalshi, and his daddy, whose social media platform is making their own prediction market, Truth Predict. The fundamental argument for prediction markets' usefulness is that they tap into the so-called wisdom of crowds, turning them into an extremely accurate predictive tool. The idea is that if you get a large number of people betting on something, you're going to approximate the best possible guess at the outcome. With modern prediction markets specifically, this has to do with the sheer number of people betting, but also the types of people betting. Experts and people with inside information could be incentivized to get in on the action. These traits were immediately noted by economists in the early 2000s who noticed that the Iowa electronics market was actually predicting political outcomes better than most experts and pollsters. We also saw an example of this in the 2024 presidential election when traditional forecasting methods had the race as a toss-up, but prediction markets saw it as a clear Trump dub. And it's this kind of stuff that has Kalshi claiming their predictions are as good as Wall Street, and as Polymarket CEO Shane Copeland feeling confident enough to talk a big game to this immortal news elf.
And how accurate is it?
It's the most accurate thing we have as mankind right now, until someone else creates some sort of super crystal ball.
But perhaps you're wondering how the Benny Blanco of Peter Thiel's got away with running this multi-billion-dollar company. I thought prediction markets were supposed to be non-profit. And in Iowa, what happened? Compliance. It can be a scary word. Don't matter if you're a chief information security officer at a goddamn enterprise business, a startup founder, or plain old employee. But compliance doesn't have to be scary, no ma'am. Not if you choose Vanta. Vanta turns compliance into compliance. I'm calm. No matter how big you are or fast you're moving, you can trust Vanta's automation to get you complying quickly and painlessly, keep you secure with continuous monitoring, and make sure you're not screwing up important stuff like audits. You do not want to screw up audits. It's what my great-grandpappy used to tell me during visiting hours at that white-collar prison they kept him in. We'll clear his name one day. But with Vanta, you don't have to worry about any of that, folks. Breathe in that compliance, baby. Breathe that shit in. Head on over to vanta.com/goodwork to get started. That's vanta.com/goodwork. Thanks very much to our friends over at Vanta for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to it. Now, quick lesson on legalized gambling for you. Here in the United States, if you're going to create a gambling product, first off, great idea. You're going to become a trillionaire. But second of all, you're going to need to hire a high-functioning team of cold, heartless lawyers to machete their way through jungles of red tape to launch said gambling product. It took the sports betting industry years and years of lobbying and groundwork to launch their products, because gambling is regulated by the states, not the federal government, so they had to do the whole process state by state. And they've still got 11 more states to go. But Kalshi and Polymarket, these cats work smarter, not harder. They looked at everything you have to do to legally launch a gambling product and said, but what if it wasn't a gambling product? Dustin, how's this shit not illegal?
That's a big question. That's the question everybody's grappling with right now. It's legal because it's federally regulated under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission.
Now, if you'll remember, the good people over at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, who oversee futures and other derivatives trading, not juicy enough. Excellent. Basically, prediction markets like Kalshi and Polymarket consider themselves to be closer to the IO electronics market than DraftKings. By this logic, their argument to the CFTC is that what they offer isn't a gambling product, but instead markets to trade futures contracts on real-world events that have meaningful economic consequences.
We're a neutral, transparent financial market. We're like the New York Stock Exchange.
Right. What is the difference between gambling and prediction markets?
There hasn't been a single financial derivative that has been set up in the US or otherwise that hasn't been called gambling at the beginning.
Now, we're starting to get into some sticky legal territory here, and if I'm keeping it 100, I do not 100% comprendo. And whenever that happens, I'm always sure to call up a professor of business law at Seton Hall Law School.
I'm a professor of business law at Seton Hall Law School.
Home
of basketball players.
Well, and what's your mascot? What's your mascot you got over there?
I should know this, but
you don't know. We'll edit that part out. So home of the
Pirates.
There we go. I tasked old Ilya Beylin here with translating the legalese by which Polymarket and Kalshi argue they're permitted to operate their platforms across the country.
The instruments that prediction markets use are styled as derivatives, and they can be styled as swaps. They can also potentially be styled as futures or options, but irrespective of which derivative they're styled as, once they're characterized as a derivative, they, subject to some considerations, can be listed on a derivatives exchange. This goes back to late 1800s, early 1900s. A major exchange, the Chicago Board of Trade, and there were a few other exchanges too. It was hosting some real trading in grain, the years of the Civil War stuffs. It also started trading what are called futures, a certain grade of a commodity at a certain price at some future date. And these were the first exchange-traded derivatives we saw in the U.S.
His words were going in my mouth and up to my brain with a speed and complexity I was frankly uncomfortable with. I needed to reestablish control. I just want to let you know, no matter how hard you try, I'm right there with you.
I love it.
I know it might not look like it, but mentally, I'm exactly where you are.
I like walking odd woods, and company is good in them.
I'm in that woods with you. I'm in that woods with you, brother. If it's economic function and utility, that's the key to legalization here. How come I'm looking on prediction markets and there's a 5% chance that Jesus is gonna come back?
Yeah, it's a great question.
Thank you.
The explanation is drift. The explanation is regulatory drift. And
what does that mean?
you start at a place where something makes a lot of sense. And then circumstances evolve and products, financial products, as all these evolutions are taking place, they change. At each step, the new one sort of resembles the status quo, but the steps get further and further from that core, including the core purposes that an instrument at the time it was brought into the regulatory system was designed to serve.
Thank you, Ilya. That was beautiful. But it also alludes to why, again, this all feels like it shouldn't be allowed.
I think my problem with Kalshi has been they tell us that none of what they're doing is gambling. That's the big thing. The argument is, so under the CFTC, everything has an economic consequence. If you're allowing event contracts, it has to have an economic consequence, right, in the world. So in that world, everything has an economic consequence. I can invent an economic consequence to everything. But yeah, there's this line of things that are really important markets, Fed interest rate cuts, the price of Bitcoin. These are things that are like very easy to diagnose. They have an economic consequence in the world. All these other things are more just for betting and speculation. And again, like we have these things because there hasn't been a whole lot of thought. Kalshi insists everything's an event. Everything can be traded, and there you go. You get everything in the world. And again, the CFTC has just kind of said, sure, it's all an event. We're not going to stop you.
And amongst the events that take place daily in our world, there is none bigger than sports, which dominate prediction market volume and make them seem pretty gambly. Kalshi in particular has made a big push into sports, which has been a huge source of growth. The number's constantly changing, but as of late 2025, about 90% of the fees Kalshi was collecting on trades came from sports. Trades like taking Los Angeles L over New York K in pro basketball. Clearly, day and night, from gambling on the Los Angeles Lakers to beat the New York Knicks on DraftKings. And if you're thinking, well, gee, Dan, Kalshi's argument for this not being sports gambling is feeling pretty thin, well, when they first launched sports contracts, they literally ran ads saying sports betting is now legal in all 50 states. Kalshi has now distanced themselves from this language, but come on. Let's zoom out from the nitty-gritty and activate common sense mode here. The vast majority of people think that sports contracts are gambling and not financial contracts. God damn it, I even found a guy who's pretty much a professional prediction markets trader, and even he thinks it's ridiculous these things aren't classified as gambling.
On Kalshi, I got $250,000, and I'm out of cash constantly because there's so much stuff to trade on every single day.
So you've made $250,000 on Kalshi? Or that's what you currently have?
That's what I currently have. I think I'm at like 550,000 or 560,000 in career earnings there. And I really started in March of 2024. I've been asked by companies to respond to reporters and say that's not gambling. And it's like, well, I don't really believe that. So look for somebody else. If you're arguing that it's not gambling, you got a tough battle ahead of you. But there's different types of gambling. Like if I'm flipping a coin and calling it, there's no skill to that, right? It's 50-50, you're right or you're wrong. But something like a poker or prediction markets or the stock market, there's ways to give yourself an edge. So you have to have an edge of some sort. If you're an idiot, you're probably not going to do well. So you've got to have some level of intelligence.
Idiots are not going to do well in these.
I would recommend, if you're an idiot, do not join this unless you want to just lose money for fun.
Ultimately, law has to be about the people, not the legalese. What's the difference when you open up a wager on the Red Sox game on, say, FanDuel versus Kalshi? Why is one gambling and the other legitimate financial activity that's regulated by the federal government? Because a laywoman can't come up with a good justification for that distinction. I think we're sort of in real trouble.
To be clear, I don't think prediction markets should be banned. I think that there is some value, and I think people should be able to interact with them how they want, but I do think that the regulation around them has to shift.
New correspondent is Kyla Scanlon, an author and economics commentator who recently published an op-ed about the dangers of prediction markets in some rag called the New York Times.
I try to stay away from good and bad as words, but I think think the reason it might be something to be cautious about is because of what the platforms incentivize, which is that insider trading. They also have a lot of really questionable markets. So, there's markets on whether or not the leader of Iran will be overthrown. There's markets on all of these things that maybe, again, we shouldn't be betting on. And so there's sort of this validation that the mainstream outlets are providing to prediction markets when they do partner with them and talk about the odds as sort of this consensus reality, like this thing that we should all accept is happening because there's, bets that it's going to happen. I'm not saying that people are wrong for doing this. It makes sense. And I think it ties into the broader issue of financial nihilism, where people feel like they can't get ahead, so they might as well go bet on all of this stuff. But that creates further desensitization too. So I think you can become more attached to something happening, but becoming more attached to a leader getting overthrown because you have money on the line, I think that psychologically and morally, morals are tough, but that's a tough one to process, right?
Indeed, it seems to me that what these prediction market companies are doing isn't so much capitalizing on their potential economic value, but rather the general chaos of our world, fueled by a never-ending media cycle and the crippling gambling addiction me and the boys developed after parlaying on Aaron Rodgers back in 2011. I mean, this is what happens when you pump your dorky finance product with 100 fluid ounces of VC-backed cash steroids. It's a brass strategy. But will that strategy work out for them in the long run? Seems to be a gamble they're willing to take. You can bet on that. Casino. For Good Work, I'm Dan Toomey.
Have you ever placed a Kalshi wager yourself?
No.
Who do you think's going to open for Bad Bunny at halftime? Do you think it's going to be TT Me Pregunto or Ballet Inolvidable?
I think that's which song he's going to play first.
Shit. Okay. What song do you think Bad Bunny's going to play first at halftime? Is it going to be TT Me Pregunto or Ballet Inolvidable?
I lack expertise in that question. That might not be a market I wager on.
Sounds like TT Me Pregunto is what you're going for here.
All right.
I'll put
Hope you win.
$100 on that.